7 Days of Grace. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the university library, casting long shadows across the worn wooden tables where Marcus had spent countless hours. His textbooks were spread before him like old friends, their pages marked with highlighter and sticky notes that told the story of late nights and early mornings, of dreams pursued despite empty pockets and an emptier stomach. Marcus Chen rubbed his tired eyes and checked his phone. Another text from the financial aid office. Another reminder that his scholarship was running out, and graduation was still 2 semesters away. At 23, he had already worked every part-time job he could find while maintaining his grades, but it was never enough. The cost of medical school loomed ahead like an impossible mountain. He had been staring at the same page of his organic chemistry textbook for 20 minutes when she first spoke to him. "Excuse me, young man. You look like you could use some coffee." Marcus looked up to see an elegant woman standing beside his table. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair pulled back in a sophisticated style and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. Her clothes spoke of wealth: a cashmere sweater, pearls that caught the library light, and shoes that probably cost more than Marcus's rent. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, blinking in confusion. "I'm Eleanor Hamilton," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I couldn't help but notice you've been here every day this week. And you look exhausted." Marcus accepted her handshake, surprised by the warmth in her grip. Marcus Chen. "And yes, I suppose I am tired. Finals are coming up." Eleanor smiled, and something in her expression reminded Marcus of his grandmother, who had passed away when he was 15. "What are you studying?" "Pre-med," Marcus replied. "Or trying to, anyway." Over the next hour, Eleanor listened as Marcus found himself telling her about his struggles. How his parents had sacrificed everything to immigrate to America, how they worked double shifts to support his education, how he was determined not to let them down despite the mounting debt. There was something about Eleanor that invited confidence, a genuine interest that Marcus hadn't experienced from anyone outside his family in years. When she offered to help with his tuition, Marcus initially refused. But Eleanor was persistent in the gentlest way possible. "I'm 71 years old," she said matter-of-factly. "I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and no children to leave it to. Helping someone like you would give my wealth purpose." The arrangement they discussed was unconventional, to say the least. Eleanor explained that her late husband's will contained specific provisions about inheritance that required her to be married. It was, she assured Marcus, purely a legal formality that would benefit them both. She would gain access to funds she wanted to use for charitable purposes, and Marcus would have his education secured. "Think of it as a scholarship with paperwork," Eleanor said with a gentle laugh. The wedding ceremony, held 1 week later, was small and elegant. Eleanor wore a beautiful white dress that made her look radiant, while Marcus stood beside her in a rented tuxedo, still hardly believing the turn his life had taken. The few guests, Eleanor's longtime friends and Marcus's parents, seemed to understand that this was about kindness rather than romance. Marcus moved into Eleanor's guest wing, maintaining his own space while officially sharing her address. Their daily routine was comfortable and respectful. Eleanor worked on her charitable foundation while Marcus continued his studies, and they shared dinner each evening, talking about everything from literature to science to their very different childhoods. For 7 days, this strange new life continued peacefully. On the 8th morning, Marcus woke to find the house unusually quiet. Eleanor always had her coffee on the terrace by 8, but when he looked outside, her chair was empty. Concerned, he knocked on her bedroom door. "Eleanor, are you feeling all right?" When there was no response, Marcus carefully opened the door and stepped inside. What he saw stopped him in his tracks. Eleanor's room was filled with medical equipment. Oxygen tanks, monitors, prescription bottles arranged on every surface. Her bedside table held a thick folder labeled, "Oncology Reports," and beside it, a handwritten letter with his name on the envelope. Eleanor herself was sitting in a chair by the window, looking frailer than he had ever seen her. She turned as he entered, and her smile was both sad and peaceful. "I wondered when you would find out," she said softly. With shaking hands, Marcus opened the letter she had written to him. "My dear Marcus," it began. "If you are reading this, then you have discovered what I have been hiding. I am dying. The doctors gave me 3 months, and that was 6 weeks ago. I married you not just to help with your education, but because I didn't want to spend my final days alone. You have given me something precious, the joy of watching a young person pursue their dreams, and the comfort of knowing that my money will help create a doctor who genuinely cares about people. Marcus looked up from the letter, tears blurring his vision. Eleanor, why didn't you tell me? Because you would have treated me like a dying woman instead of simply Eleanor, she replied. These past 7 days have been the happiest I've had since my husband passed. You've made me laugh, shared your dreams with me, and treated me with respect and kindness. Not because you pitied me, but because that's who you are. Marcus knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. What can I do? Be my friend, Eleanor said simply. For whatever time I have left, let me help you become the doctor you're meant to be. And promise me that when you're treating patients someday, you'll remember that everyone has a story, everyone deserves dignity, and sometimes the greatest healing comes not from medicine, but from human connection. Over the following weeks, Marcus became Eleanor's companion in the truest sense. He drove her to appointments, sat with her during treatments, and listened to stories of her adventurous youth and her late husband's kindness. In return, she helped him study, offering wisdom about life that no textbook could provide. When Eleanor passed peacefully 3 months later, Marcus held her hand and whispered his promise to honor her memory through his future work as a physician. At the funeral, he learned the full extent of her generosity. Not only had she secured his medical school education, but she had established a scholarship fund in their names to help other struggling students pursue their dreams. Years later, Marcus Chen would often think of Eleanor as he worked with patients, remembering her lesson that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the connections we make and the lives we touch. And in his office, next to his medical degree, hung a wedding photograph, not of a young man who married for money, but of 2 people who found grace in an unlikely friendship.